Hey everyone. If you've been following along with this series on psychology's major schools of thought, you've already learned about structuralism, functionalism, and behaviorism. And today we're diving into another revolutionary approach that that completely changed how we think about human perception and cognition. It's called Gestalt Psychology, and it emerged around 1912 in Germany with a pretty radical idea: the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So, what does that actually mean? Well, Gestalt psychologists argued that we don't just perceive individual elements, we perceive organized wholes or gestalts. Think about it: when you look at a face, you don't see separate eyes, nose, and mouth. You see a complete face, right? This was revolutionary because it went against everything the other schools were saying. Remember structuralism back in the uh, back in the 1870s and 1880s. Wundt and Titchener wanted to break consciousness down into its most basic elements through introspection. They thought if you could identify all the individual sensations and feelings, you could understand the whole mind. But the Gestalt psychologists Max Wertheimer, who started it all in 1912, along with Wolfgang, Köhler, and Kurt Koffka, they said, hold on, that's completely wrong. They believed that breaking things down into parts actually destroys the very thing you're trying to study. Now, functionalism, which was big in the 1890s with William James, focused on what mental processes do, how they help us adapt. And behaviorism, well, starting with Watson in 1913 and later with Skinner in the 1930s and beyond, behaviorism pretty much ignored mental processes altogether, focusing only on observable behaviors and stimulus response patterns. But Gestalt psychology, flourishing through the 1920s and 1930s, brought the focus back to perception and cognition, arguing that our minds actively organize and interpret sensory information. We are not just passive receivers of stimuli, we are active. We are active meaning makers. Let me give you some examples of Gestalt principles that were developed during this time. There's the principle of proximity. We tend to group things that are close together. There's similarity. We group similar objects, and there's closure. Our minds fill in missing information to create complete patterns. You know that famous image where you can see either two faces or a vase? That's figure ground perception, another key Gestalt concept discovered in this era. Our minds organize visual information into a main figure and a background. British associationism, by the way, which goes back to philosophers like John Locke in the 1600s and David Hume in the 1700s, tried to explain how ideas connect through association, like similarity or contiguity. But Gestalt psychologists argued that this centuries-old approach was too simplistic. They said our perception involves much more complex organizational principles that can't be reduced to simple associations. The influence of Gestalt psychology is everywhere today. In the 1940s and 1950s, Fritz Perls developed Gestalt therapy, which focuses on present moment awareness and the whole person, not just uh, not just isolated symptoms. In design and advertising, professionals use Gestalt principles that were first identified nearly a century ago to create visually appealing and effective layouts. Even modern cognitive psychology, which emerged in the 1950s and 1960s, owes a debt to Gestalt ideas. When we talk about pattern recognition, visual perception, or how we process complex information, we're building on foundations that Gestalt psychologists laid down over a century ago. So, to summarize the key differences and their historical context, structuralism in the 1870s to 1890s wanted to break things down, but Gestalt in the 1910s to 1930s wanted to keep things whole. Functionalism in the 1890s asked, "What does it do?" while Gestalt asked, "How do we organize what we see?" Behaviorism from 1913 onward focused on external behaviors, but Gestalt focused on internal perceptual processes. And British associationism from the 1600s to 1700 explained connections through simple associations, while Gestalt emphasized complex organizational principles. Each of these schools, emerging at different points in history, contributed something valuable to our understanding of human psychology. And Gestalt's emphasis on holistic perception, that insight from over 100 years ago, continues to shape how we understand the mind today. If you found this helpful, give it a like and let me know in the comments which psychological school resonates most with you. Don't forget to uh, don't forget to subscribe for more psychology content. Thank you and take care.